Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later,
Hello everybody and welcome back to Apex Racing TV's coverage of the Radical Racing Challenge. We're racing at the wonderful circuit that is Jerez. Although it is a very wonderful circuit with a very storied history, it seems like that hasn't really translated, as we have a little bit of a low turnout tonight, but I think regardless of the low turnout that we have here, I think we'll still have a wonderful race. I'm your host Ron Monge. Joined right next to me is J.R. Gregory, with Joshua Wilkie working all the cameras in the virtual production hauler. Now, I mentioned a few moments ago that this circuit is very storied. Of course, it was the home of that fantastic F1 season finale back in 1996, where there's a 3-way tie for the pole position between, I think it was Heinz-Harald Frentzen, Jacques Villeneuve, and Michael Schumacher for the pole position. And then the race itself was absolutely dramatic with that definitely controversial incident between Schumacher and Villeneuve that ultimately decided the 1997 Formula One World Championship. But this track has still held some many great events over the years, holds some motorcycle races all throughout the year, held Formula One for the longest time, and now we're racing here for the Radical Racing Challenge. We're towards the end of the season now. We only have a few weeks to go here, so we might see some participation drop off. Certainly you can see on the left hand side of your screen only 9 drivers in this race right now, which is a little bit disappointing, but it's a newer track to the iRacing system, so you can't really blame them. But I will say one attractive part of this track that is definitely a big improvement compared to last year is getting rid of that horrendous chicane. We are running on the Moto layout here tonight, and compared to last season, when we were using the Ayrton Senna chicane that Andreas Friedrich, who we're riding on board with now, is about to drive past. You can see it on the right-hand side of your screen. It's a tight chicane that was introduced after Ayrton Senna's death in 1994 at the San Marino Grand Prix. So it was introduced there, and they add in that stupid tight chicane and named it after him, which I personally think is a disgrace to the man himself. So we're running without that chicane, thank God, and hopefully if this track is on the schedule for Season 1 of 2024 here in iRacing, hopefully they run on the chicaneless layout of this track once again. So we're in qualifying now, and it's Andreas Friedrich setting a commanding tone right now in qualifying at a 1:33.4, setting a very good time here in this qualifying session. We only have a minute left. These drivers are rounding out their laps, and it looks like qualifying is just about up. Andreas Friedrich taking a very nice pole position. He's had an up and down start to the year so far, so it's a very welcome result from him. I'm sure he'll try and capitalize off of that pole position and maybe grab the win here tonight. So the drivers are lining up on their grid. We're going to get the starting grid here soon, and you can see Andreas Friedrich grabbing the pole position. The first of these Friday broadcasts. That's Felix Samoa, is a familiar name to the Radical Racing Challenge here for these Friday broadcasts. First time we've seen him this season, I believe. He is in P2. Then we have James Barry, friend of the broadcast, in P3, Simon Flim in 4th, Chad Fox in 5th, Josh Brain in 6th, Jorge Gonzaga in P7, and then we have Samir Kadora in P8, Lawrence Reagan in P9, Maya, I apologize if I butchered that pronunciation, he is in the 10th position, setting a time 15 seconds slower than anyone else. And then Bo Ambos, who actually had a black flag during the qualifying session, he did not set a qualifying time. I'm sure he's pretty disappointed with himself, but we'll see if he can try and claw his way through the field before the checkered flag ends tonight's race. So I'll bring you in here real quick. JR, what do you expect from tonight's race?
Well, I think the word of the day here, Ron, is going to be tire management. This track has a lot of medium speed corners that are just going to blow the front tires off of these radicals. These drivers are going to have to be careful, and we'll see how this unfolds as Friedrich. Looks like he's going to get away pretty clean here, and is going to try to make up, as you said, for some very shaky performances in the last couple of races that allowed James Barry to get past him in the overall standings. And just as I say that, there's Barry snaking the lead away from Friedrich. So Friedrich's got his work cut out for him if he wants to claw his way past Barry in the overall season standings.
And you mentioned blowing off the front tires. It looked like Felix Samoa's blew off the rear tires there at the start. He had a shocking start from P2 and is now running in the last podium spot. So we'll see if he was able to manage to hold onto that position. You can see Chad Fox is hounding him. Meanwhile, up towards the front, we've got Andreas Friedrich and Barry battling. You can see them going side by side, going into the hairpin at the end of the long straightaway. Meanwhile, you've got some action farther behind in the field. You can see some drivers that were attempting to go side by side at the end of the very long straightaway at this track. Turn 6 here at this Jerez circuit, which is probably going to be the best overtaking opportunity on this circuit. It's the heaviest braking zone. It goes into a very tight hairpin, and then you have a nice area to kind of stake your claim on that position after you go into turn 7, which is a very tricky corner to get right. Very tricky corners on this track. This is definitely one of them. Avoiding that terrible chicane and coming through that very fast right-hander, a series of right-handers to round this lap off. But James Barry taking a very commanding lead at the front right now. He's pulling about 5 or 6 car lengths right now to complete this first lap of 15 here in tonight's race. You can see James Barry and all the field making it through lap 1 clean. That is somewhat surprising, all things considered. With a track so tight and technical, you'd expect some drivers to maybe sneak a wheel, and then with how difficult these cars are to drive with very cold tires, you'd expect some sort of chaos to rear its ugly head on lap 1, but that wasn't the case, as as James Barry is holding on to a fairly nice lead, all things considered, but it's definitely not comfortable as he still has Andres Friedrich less than a half a second behind him, and then Samoa is less than a half a second behind him as well. So we've got a nice close battle up towards the front. That will be what we have to keep our eyes on. But meanwhile, we're keeping our eyes right now on Cadora, who's currently running in P6. He is all over the back of Flim right now, who's trying to break into the top 5 positions. Some nice drivers that we haven't seen too much of this season. Right now, Cadora is up 2 spots right now, so he is the biggest position gainer outside of James Barry, who managed to get a good start there from P3, and there's contact there coming through the hairpin. That's a big off there for Cadora and Flim. Oh, he rejoins the track and gets hit once again. I believe that's Reagan that hit him. So we have a 3-car accident here at the hairpin there. We might have to take a look at a replay, but just as I mentioned how we had a very clean start, we see chaos rear its ugly head on lap 2.
Yeah, Cadora trying to poke his nose inside there. Maybe should not have done that. Didn't really have position to contest that apex, and ends up turning car 8 there. Yeah, that's definitely a little iffy. Gonna get just a little smooch. 2 cars are gonna turn. Gonzaga manages to somehow avoid that incident, and then my goodness, Cadora not holding the brakes after that. He's not gonna make any friends for the couple of decisions there.
And I'm not sure who else that was involved in that. We saw another car tag, I believe it was Reagan, tagged Reagan after that contact, so I'm not sure who that was. I believe that's Maya, I believe that was the driver that got collected in that incident as well. So another driver picking up damage from that incident, and just very close quarters racing there. Yeah, you can see the car up ahead there. So that, I believe that's Ambos actually that has the very damaged front end. You can see the, at least on my screen, at least the nose is completely gone off that Radical SR10. So that's going to play really terrible effect on that car. An interesting aerodynamic strategy there from the American as he's going to get swallowed up going down the straightaway. You can see it's basically like he's dragging a parachute, or I say that he might have been dragging the brakes a little bit just to get out of the 2 drivers' waves there. They get through the corner nice and clean after the shemazel that was that incident there last lap. But meanwhile, while all of that was going on, the gap at the front has closed up a little bit between Barry and Andreas Friedrich. You can see now it's about 3.5 tenths of a second. Meanwhile, Samoa is still within striking distance as these 2 drivers collide. Felix Samoa might be in for a dominant win, which we saw a lot of in Season 3. He was really the main force to be reckoned with throughout Season 3, but then he really just didn't show up. He just kind of, I mean, I'm sure he's been racing these Radicals because he's found so much success in them, but at least on these Friday broadcasts here on Apex Racing TV, he really hasn't shown up this season. So right now he's looking at a very good position. Right now he's kind of the camera car for this battle right up ahead. We were riding on board with him going down that start-finish straightaway, but you can see that gap there is very close between Andres Friedrich and James Barry. We might see a battle here heat up between these 2 in the not-too-distant future, but right now, besides that small little incident, it's fairly clean. I'll ask you this quick question here, JR. You think with this battle, you think James Barry is actually burning up his tires quite bad, or do you think he's actually conserving his stuff, and you think he's actually setting himself up quite well?
You know, he looks fairly smooth right now, Ron, and I think actually the pressure is really going to be on Friedrich. Friedrich is having to drive in the dirty air while he's getting pressure behind from Samoas, and is probably getting a little tired leg from kicking himself from struggling on the start. Once again, Friedrich did exactly what he needed to do in qualifying, got that pole position, started the race with Barry behind him, but that lead lasted for a few hundred meters, and Barry immediately swapped positions with him as we see Barry, Friedrich, and Samoas drive away from the field. The gap to P4, Chad Fox, is already up to 4 seconds and rapidly climbing. So these 3 are showing their mastery of Jerez here and leaving everybody in their dust.
Yeah, that's certainly the case right now. Samoas is putting in some smokers of a lap time. We're going to see what kind of lap times these drivers are tracking this lap as they go down the start-finish straightaway and are about to cross the start-finish line in right about there, and we're going to get the lap times here. You can see Friedrich a little bit quicker than Barry, and then Samoa is actually dropping back a little bit. You can see that gap is growing a little bit, but Friedrich right now is applying the pressure to the back of Barry. He went for the move, well, looked for the move, going around the outside into turn 2. That's not really a corner where you expect to see some passes at, but he can definitely see, you can't really see his body language because we're not seeing the man himself, but you can just see from the way he's driving the car right now, he might be feeling a little bit impatient at this stage. I think I mean, Andreas Friedrich has a somewhat frustrating season, at least with how these Friday broadcasts have gone. He hasn't gotten a win so far, and I think he sniffs a golden opportunity here. He is very close to the back of Barry, pulling out, going for a move around the outside to battle the last of the late breakers. Barry gets a leg up on him, but it looks like Friedrich, it looked like he was going to try and go for the switchback there as they exited the hairpin of turn 6. So Andreas Friedrich is still incredibly close to the back of Barry. You can see the gap there, less than a quarter of a second there, dropped down to about a tenth of a second there at times. So you can see as we're riding on board with Friedrich right now, this is going to be a very good battle to watch from start to finish. You can see the field is spread out a little bit. You can take a look at the left-hand side of your screen with these SDK graphics. You can see really this closest battle on track, which with a fairly small field, all things considered, only 10 drivers currently out on track after the incident that Reagan had, where I believe he might be either still repairing his car or he might have just Alt F4'd out of the session. I'll take a quick look at that, but I will ask, just bring up this one little point here. There's been a lot of discussion about the participation numbers with this series. The participation hasn't really been the best in the world with this series. The racing has been incredible. These cars drive really well. They may struggle for the first few laps out of the pits, but after you get a nice hang of driving these Radical SR10s, they are really fun. There's a little bit of a stigma really in the iRacing community that these Radicals still drive like crap. You know, there's a big controversy back in season 2 where these cars basically drove like a 30s F1 car. They understeered mid-corner, oversteered mid-corner. They're really unpredictable beasts, but now the people at iRacing have managed to reel them in quite nicely. So I think if anyone watching this race right now wants to drive these Radicals and be on an Apex Racing TV broadcast, we follow the official top split of the Radical Racing Challenge on iRacing. So if you want to give these cars a whirl and appear on Apex Racing TV, you know where to join us. So it's I'm curious what kind of schedule the Radical community will cook up, because this is right about the time of the year we probably might get an idea as what the schedule is going to be in a few weeks' time. By the time we hit week 10, that schedule will probably be all but confirmed for season 1 of 2024. So we'll have to see what the Radical community cooks up when it comes to schedules. Part of me is kind of hoping that Jerez doesn't appear on the schedule, because participation, as you can see, with only 10 drivers, which is actually the highest so far this week. The previous highest was 7. So I think maybe the Radical community might not choose Jerez. We'll have to see what the schedule will look like. But I'll ask you this real quick here, JR, as we're seeing this battle between Friedrich and Barry continue to heat up here. What do you think? What are your personal takes on Jerez and it being on the Radical season schedule, if I can spit my words out?
Well, you know, it has not been, horrible. It certainly has impacted the turnout, but we did end up with an official grid here, 11 drivers, and kind of taking a step back from this track in particular and looking at the overall schedule, I think that we would both agree to tip our hats to the Radical community with the schedule that they cooked up here for 2023 season 4. We've had some fantastic tracks, some great driving, and also a tip of the hat to iRacing for allowing the participants in these series a voice in the tracks that they would like to see, because nobody knows these Radicals like these guys, and they have definitely chosen some phenomenal tracks. We had that epic battle at Alton Park, good racing at Brands Hatch, VIR, Spa, and the upcoming Green Hell Nordschleife. So the schedule looking really great, with the possible exception of a couple of low participation tracks such as this one. But as you mentioned, Ron, bypassing that center chicane and using the motorcycle layout is a huge improvement of the flow of this track, and pretty decent racing so far.
Yeah, I think the racing has been very good. I mean, we're seeing this cat and mouse battle develop here still between Friedrich and Barry. The gap has increased a little bit here as Barry manages to stake that claim on that P1 spot. You can see the gap in lap times between those two. Last lap about 0.3 of a second in lap time, but I gotta bring up the schedule this year because, as you pointed out, rightfully so, this has been a really good schedule. I've enjoyed quite a lot of the racing here, and even though I have my own personal gripes about this track, I still think it's a very good circuit. And with higher participation, I think we'd be in for a barn burner of a race from start to finish. This has probably been a bit on the lower end of the racing action, if I'm being brutally honest, but it's still been pretty good. We've had only a few incidents. I believe Cadora might have been involved in one of them. We might get a replay here soon to see what happened here. We saw him involved in that incident early on. You can see him in that very striking car there, number 6, as they go into turn 2. Might have been a spin through here, and yes, it is, and ooh, nearly makes contact with with Flim there, who they made contact with a few laps ago towards the start of the race. I believe it might have been lap 2 or lap 3 at turn 6, so they nearly made contact again with that spin there for Cadora coming through turn 2. But I think the schedule really, just in the whole, has been pretty damn impressive. It's been a very good schedule. It's been a very fun series to cover. I've been covering this series now since the end of season 1 earlier this year, so I'm coming up on covering these radicals for about a year at this point, so it feels a little bit long, but I think the schedule this year has still been pretty good. As you see lap traffic involved now, I believe that's Maya there that was getting out of the way of the front runners. But looking through the schedule this season, really there's only a few races where I feel like they should probably swap it out for something else. I think having Road America be week 4 instead of week 1 might not have been the best decision in the world, because that was always kind of like our spiritual season opener for this series. And I think bringing the series to Magny-Cours was not the best in the world. I wasn't there for that broadcast, unfortunately, but I do remember tuning in, and I think that was the lowest participation we've had of any of these Friday broadcasts, and I was kind of thankful that I was on vacation at that point and didn't have to buy that track, as it's not really a track that it hasn't attracted Formula One, as they left there back in 2008, I believe, and it doesn't really attract me as a sim racer personally. But that's just my opinion. Opinions are like noses. We all have them and they all smell. But I think Magny-Cours, not the best decision in the world to have on the schedule, so maybe the radical community could probably swap that out. I think one glaring omission from the schedule has to be Sebring, because we had the night race there a year ago. I say a year ago, last season, a few months ago, we had that race there at Sebring under the lights. And even though it didn't bring out the best turnout in the world, I think it was a pretty good novelty. Had some very intriguing racing there with the very cold tire temperatures that those drivers had to battle all throughout the race. So I think that might have been a little bit of a glaring omission. Maybe we'll see if it makes its return for season 1 of 2024. We'll just have to wait and see. But then looking through the rest of the schedule, we've got beautiful tracks like Alton Park, which I think was probably the best race we had all season. We had action from start to finish with that race. And then other tracks like Road America, Spa, Road Atlanta, Brands Hatch, VIR, and that was just all tracks that we had in a row. We got spoiled for choice with this season. We have more fantastic races up here with the Radical Challenge in the final 3 weeks. We've got Mount Panorama in a week's time, and we've got Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, which was the season finale last season, as now the penultimate round of the year. And then we return to the Classic season finale at the Norderschleife, which was actually part of the Ringmeister series here on iRacing this past week. So I think overall the schedule is pretty good, but I think with a few swap outs here and there, I think the schedule could be even better. I'll ask you this, JR. What would your vision be of a really good Radical schedule here?
Well, as I said, I've been very impressed with the schedule that they came up with for this season. We've seen some great competition, and as I mentioned, these Radical drivers, knowing the cars so well, know the tracks that take advantage of the strengths of these cars. And you mentioned, Ron, that Sebring race was pretty entertaining, and when you think of racing under the lights in Florida, let me throw a crazy idea out for you. How would you like to see these Radicals up on the banking on Daytona road course? So that might make for some interesting stuff.
Ooh, that is a very good suggestion you've got there. We actually had that race in season 2 earlier this year. We ran at the high banks of Daytona, and even though the car was driving like crap that season, it was still a really entertaining race. So I'd love to see how these new reworked and much better to drive Radicals now from approaching season 1 of 2024. I would love to see how they would react to a track like this. I think that'd be pretty cool to have them on the high banks of Daytona. Maybe swap that out for a track like Magny-Cours, because Magny-Cours is kind of it's not really the most entertaining track in the world. It kind of had a reputation in Formula One as not promoting a whole lot of overtaking. And as we're seeing an overtake here with Maya going another lap down, he's not a name that we've seen on these broadcasts before. Right now, he's been lapped by the whole field. But anyways, getting back to the subject of schedules, I think Daytona would probably be a really good addition to the schedule, and I'm thinking of some other circuits that we could probably run at too. I know there's been some discussion about Algrave, the Portimao track that was ran by Formula One during the pandemic years back in 2020 and 2021. I know that is going to be popping up on the schedule, not on the schedule, on the service here. Maybe this upcoming season. I saw iRacing had a little bit of a sneak peek as to that track. And if you want to learn more about the world of sim racing, check out the late Apex here on Apex Racing TV, which is actually starting right after our broadcast at 5 p.m. Eastern. I think that's 2 p.m. Pacific, if I'm not mistaken. I have no idea what time it is in Bryn because, well, who cares? But I think there's so many different tracks that they could try. I think Portimao would probably be an interesting track because they have very long straightaways that definitely play well with the slipstreaming nature that these cars have, but you also have some tricky corners that would be nice for these drivers to try and contest. I think there's definitely there's definitely different tracks that I'd love to see these radicals on, and I think maybe this upcoming season they'll try and experiment with it a little bit more during the summer, well, the spring, the summer, and the fall. The radical community tries to schedule their events with the actual radical races happening in real life. It's part of the reason why we've had races at Sebring and even Brands Hatch as well. So I think that could be something that doesn't play as much of a role during the winter, so we might see some more creative decisions with track layouts. If I wanted to go with a real stupid decision, why not run on the centripetal circuit on iRacing? Just have them going around in a circle for a while, or maybe even run an oval race with the radicals, run at Martinsville or something like that. Just have a weird kind of hole-in-the-wall event just to try and drum up some excitement and some hilarity. I'm sure that'd be an awesome broadcast to watch here on Apex Racing TV. These radical drivers, which definitely don't take a lot of quarters from their competitors. They definitely break their elbows out a lot. That'd be awesome to see them run on NASCAR style short track. So maybe we'll just have to wait and see what kind of schedule they cook up for season 1 in 2024.
Yeah, pretty interesting. Whoa, and wow, that was good. I actually executed a commentator's curse there on Friedrich with my mind. Get a load of that. I was just about to ask you, Ron, what you thought Friedrich was planning here. He's been holding that about half-second gap for, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 laps here, and it appeared to me as if he was just trying to measure up Barry and try to make a move on the last lap. But as I said, just as I was thinking about that, you saw that big lockup in the hairpin heading onto the front straight, and now that gap has ballooned up to 1.1 seconds, and it looks like James Barry may get away here scot-free.
Yeah, I think I'm sure Andreas Friedrich was probably taking it easy for the middle part of this race while we were talking schedules. There's not a lot going on track. I think Andreas Friedrich was possibly saving up his tires and trying to save up his stuff for last lap assault, as he saw a big slide there coming out of turn 6. And with that big lock up there at the final corner last lap, I think Andreas Friedrich, he was definitely saving up his tires, but I think after a big lock up like that, his front left tire is probably a rectangle at this stage. So I think Andreas Friedrich was going to try towards the end of the race assault here on James Barry, but you can see that gap now is about 1.5 seconds. He has Samoas behind him right now. He might try and try an assault here and try and sneak up into P2. We'll just have to wait and see, but James Barry has really been in command of this race from start to finish, and I mean, besides that start where he got the move done on Andreas Friedrich 2 corners in, he's had a somewhat quiet race here. He's had a few moments here and there, went a little wide there coming out of the final corner, as you just saw, but he's had a fairly quiet race. It hasn't been the most exciting race, if I'm being brutally honest. We're not working at a bakery here, so I'm not going to sugarcoat things. So James Barry has had a fairly quiet race all around right now, currently running 1.5 seconds, even still setting very good lap times of 33.7. So he's just continuing to hit his marks, pull that gap slowly but surely. He is pulling that gap away from Andreas Friedrich. And I think right now Friedrich is still dropping back. You can see that gap now is down to about 1.8 seconds between them as they're going through the other very long multiple apex. I think it's a double or even a triple left-hander coming through the first few corners of this lap. So I think Andreas Friedrich is really struggling right now. I think those tires have fallen off of a cliff. The tire management is such a big it's such a big point of contention with these cars, and I think tire management plays a massive role into this race. We're seeing this is a very close battle here between Fox right now and Brain right now. Josh Brain and Chad Fox battling here. Well, I can't really call it a battle. It's more of a game of cat and mouse as these two go through the middle section of this circuit. So right now, it's really a game of cat and mouse. Some of these drivers are trying to psych each other out and force them to make a mistake at this track. With so many corners on it, it is very easy to make a mistake.
Yeah, and my goodness, and look at that gap between Friedrich and Samoa's here. It's under half a second now. My timing is showing it's actually under 0.3. So Friedrich is going to go from sniffing around behind James Berry for a potential P1 to getting knocked down to the third step of the podium. And meanwhile, Berry, long gone. He's 2 seconds ahead now. And Ron, correct me if I'm wrong, but if Berry can hang on here as he takes the white flag here on lap 15, if Berry can hang on here, will this be his first P1 at our 2100 GMT broadcast of the Radical Racing Challenge? I think it will be.
Ooh, that could be... I think you might be right in that. Barry has been very close. He's been on the podium on multiple occasions, certainly in the top 5 in practically every race we've had this season. But James Berry just hasn't been able to seal the deal. But right now, it's looking very good for him, barring a massive incident for him in these final few moments of this race. I think it will be a fairly easy P1 for him. Certainly not easy driving these cars and driving them as well as he has, but he's had a very quiet race, all things considered. Meanwhile, the battle that we were looking at last lap between Josh Brain and Chad Fox continues. They're still separated by only a few car lengths right now, but I think with not a whole lot of overtaking opportunities, it might not be enough for him. We're following Felix Samoas right now. He is closing in slowly but surely on Andreas Friedrich. You can see up ahead there, James Berry is just pulling away. He'll take a fairly commanding win here in this race, but I think we have to keep our attention on Samoas. We'll see if he can do a dive here. We might get a peek of it here. I think Samoas just isn't close enough. No, he is not. He's not going to go for the last lap send there on Andres Friedrich. So it's going to be James Berry taking his first win of these Friday Radical broadcasts here on Apex Racing TV. He takes a commanding win, winning by about 4 seconds here. Not 4 seconds, 2 seconds here in tonight's race. He takes a commanding win over Andres Friedrich. He took the lead very early on with a commanding move going into turn 2, and he seals the deal here with a very commanding victory over Andres Friedrich in P2 and Felix Samoas a very close third.
And Friedrich there lit the wick with Samoa's sniffing around on his bumper, threatening P2. Friedrich in that last lap throwing down the fast lap of the race at 1:33.59, a decent chunk above anybody else on the track. So Friedrich showing that he has the pace here, and smacking, giving Samoas the stiff arm, telling him that he's going to need to stay on the bottom of the podium. But yeah, pretty uneventful race, but you know, we can't have Olton Park every week, or it wouldn't be good for my heart, I don't think, Ron.
Well, I think it was kind of nice to have at least oh, good lord, that was yeah, there's women and children dead in the grandstand just from shock after that incident there with Kadura after he crossed the start-finish line. But I think it was nice to have a somewhat relaxed broadcast. Not a whole lot in the world of racing action, but in the world of Radicals, there was definitely a lot to talk about. Of course, we had that nice conversation there talking about schedules. I'm sure here in the next few weeks, probably before next week's broadcast at Bathurst, I think we'll probably have a good idea as to what schedule we're going to have. So that'll be a nice thing to look at. Maybe actually, I say that I think the voting was actually done for the schedule in late October, early November. I was browsing the iRacing Radical forums, and they put up a post saying that the voting was going to be done on their Discord server, on the Radical Discord server, and they put up the post on October 27th, I believe it was. So they've probably already done that. It's already been decided, and I think we'll probably get a rough idea as to what the schedule for Season 1 is going to be here in a few moments' time. So these drivers have now finally all finished the race. You can see the number 7 there doing a weird strategy there at the pit entry, trying some, I'm not sure what he's doing, trying to figure something out. We're not sure what it is, but all the drivers have crossed the finish line now. We should get the results here in the not too distant future, I believe. Yeah, it's a very short field, all things considered, so this isn't the longest order that we've had in these races. It's on the shorter end. As you can see, only 11 drivers started this race, and only 9 of them are going to take take the checkered flag. So it's James Berry taking a commanding win here. He actually slowed up in the final few moments of that race and wins by only a second and a half. Only a second and a half, I say. Andres Friedrich finishes in P2. He got challenged by Felix Samoas, who finishes in P3, only about a little over 0.6 of a second behind him. And looking through the rest of the field, you've got Chad Fox and Josh Brain rounding out your top 5 there, involved in a nice battle there for a few moments. They finished 4th and 5th. That's Jorge Gonzaga in P6. Simon Flim, who we haven't seen, you can see he was involved in this incident that we're looking at right now. He is fairly new, I believe, to these cars. I don't believe we've seen him on these Friday broadcasts yet, so he finishes in P7. Not the best night for him. That's Samir Kador, who had that massive accident after the race. He finishes in P7, and then we have, sorry, I apologize, he finishes in P8. That's Bo Ambos, who was involved in that crash as well. Had massive front-end damage. He finishes well far behind in P9. That's Andre Mia, who finishes in P10, multiple laps down. He was the slowest driver throughout the field and just decided to park it for this test and tune session for him. He finishes in P10. And then it was Lawrence Reagan who got involved in a crash very early on. He got involved in that crash that we were seeing a replay of. You can see him right there in the 10 car. He finishes in P11, 14 laps down.
Oh, and it looks like, as he likes to do, looks like we have James Berry out in the hallway. Let me go ahead and drag him in. James Berry, you took a P3, turned it into a P1, I believe, for your first Friday 2100 GMT win on one of our Apex Racing TV broadcasts. And congratulations on that. And how was the race for you today?
I probably enjoyed it more than you guys did. I don't know how exciting it was for you guys. But in the past weeks, we've had all of these crazy races where it's been stressful for me and amazing stuff for you guys. And I think this one I enjoyed it a bit more, probably because, yeah, I'm really happy to get my first win on these broadcasts.
Nice. Well, congratulations again. And one thing that was on my mind heading into this, I have not had a lot of track time in the Radical on this track, but I've had quite a bit of GT3 time. And this track is kind of notoriously difficult on tires. It likes to kind of grind those front tires off and these medium speed sweepers. So how did tire management play into your strategy today?
Honestly, I never really think about tires. I just think about being smooth no matter what, because the fastest way around the track is the smoothest way, really. But judging by how Andreas kind of dropped off the pace in the second half of the race, I'm guessing he probably suffered from that, and that made my life a bit easier, so that was nice.
Yeah, he definitely did, and you had that great getaway, moved up into P1 right away, and kind of forced Friedrich to deal with a big chunk of the race in your aero wash. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Toward the end there, he had a big lock up into the hairpin leading onto the front straight, just as I kind of was imagining that he was eyeballing you and figuring out how to set you up, maybe down into that turn 6 hairpin, and right as I was saying that, he had a huge lockup and almost lost his P2. So yeah, very well done, and you look smooth out there. And I guess when you're as super smooth as James Berry, you don't have to worry about tire management. You just have to be yourself, and the race will come to you. Yeah, so congratulations, James. Really great job. And as we wrap up here, is there anybody you would like to thank or give a shout out to?
Well, thanks again to everyone who turns up, because there's not many of us, but it's enough to put on a race. And yeah, hopefully we can get more people in the future. Hopefully next week at Bathurst.
Oh yeah, I think Bathurst is going to be a good one. I'm going to be looking forward to it, and looking forward to what you can do out there. You've taken over P1 on the season a couple weeks ago. Friedrich's still trying to make something happen here late in the season, but he's running out of opportunities. So best of luck to you and the whole Radical community. Really, it's a great community. We've really enjoyed covering you, and we'll see you down under next week.
Yep. See you there, guys. Thank you.
All right, and that was your winner, James Berry. So Bothurst coming up, Mount Panorama. What do you think that one's going to hold in store for us, Ron?
Oh, that is going to be a very dramatic race. I think it's a nice blend of some other stuff that we've seen this season. You have the nice, tight, and very twisty sections up towards the top of the mound there, kind of similar to what we've seen at other very tight and technical tracks. Certainly Ulm Park springs to mind when we think of those very tight and technical circuits where we had that fantastic racing there, but we also have those long straightaways and very heavy braking zones that I think will lend itself to some pretty good racing as well. So we'll just have to wait and see what kind of action we have. Fingers crossed that's better, because James Barry kind of hinted around the fact, and I'll break the fourth wall here and read out a message I sent in the in-race chat that we have here in the Apex booth. I said, this is basically a talk show at this stage when we were talking about the schedule, so I'm certainly looking forward to the next stop in the schedule at Bathurst. I think that'll be a very good race. I'll ask you, JR, what are you expecting from that race?
You know, Bathurst is challenging for any car. It plays to some of the strengths of the Radical and some of the weaknesses. A couple of spots I'm thinking of in particular, coming over Skyline, having to get the car woed up for that twisty downhill section, particularly having to get the car woed up for what I call that Falcon left-hand turn onto Conrad straight. The drivers are going to have to be very careful with their brakes, careful with tire management, unless you're Mr. Smooth James Barry and you don't have to think about such things. But we should see some good racing. Obviously, not a lot of passing opportunities on Bathurst. The main strategery, to coin a phrase, being mainly to keep it clean and wait for opportunities to come to you. And obviously, getting a good qualifying time down will be critical. And additionally, needless to say, we'll have some good drafting opportunities coming down that long Conrad straight that drivers will have to deal with on every lap. So it should be an exciting race. I'm looking forward to significant increase in participation due to the location and the excitement of racing on Mount Panorama, and looking forward to it.
I look forward to the awesome racing that we might have. I look forward to the higher grid size, and I look forward to the strategery that we might see in 1 week's time at Bathurst. If you want to join us for that broadcast, it's the same time that this broadcast started, in only a week time. These Friday broadcasts are covering the official top split here of the Radical Racing Challenge. So if you want to join us to watch this race, you know where to find us here on Apex Racing TV. But if you want to drive these cars, which is a pleasurable experience, you know where to go as well. Go on to the Radical Racing Challenge on iRacing and just give these cars a whirl, because it is a hoot. I'm more of an open wheel guy myself, but I think these cars are still very fun to drive. Slide around a little bit, but it's a nice, fun, manageable amount of sliding around, so it's a really enjoyable experience, and hopefully a lot more people will realize that, and we'll get some higher grid sizes here in the not too distant future. But speaking of Apex Racing TV, we've got a whole lot going on here. We've got some Ray Esports Weekend Warriors races here. We've got the SRF Weekend Warriors and the Formula 4 Weekend Warriors. They'll be racing on Super Sunday here on Apex Racing TV. We've got the Rick Matek World Challenge at Monza. That'll be a very dramatic race. We've got the season opener for the ARA Porsche Cup. That'll be at Watkins Glen. That'll be a good race to look forward to. And we've also got ARA Super Formula at Road America for round 7 of their season. And we also have, if you're not really in the mood for racing after the action that we had here tonight, or lack thereof, if I'm being brutally honest, you can check out the late Apex here on Apex Racing TV, which will be starting in about 15 or so minutes time. So you can check out Sam Fitzpatrick and Dave Sampson here on the Apex Racing TV gang here talk about the world of sim racing. I believe they're going to be talking a lot about the whole IndyCar gaming fiasco, about them possibly coming back to iRacing, and the whole motorsports games fiasco involving them. So if you want to learn more about that, you know where to find coverage of the world of sim racing in a few moments time. So I think that'll do it here for the Radical Racing Challenge here at Jerez. Fingers crossed we have a better race in a week's time at Bathurst, but I hope we still put on good broadcasts for you wherever you're watching this from. So for myself, Ron Mullins, J.R. Gregory joining me in the commentary booth, and Joshua Wilkie working all the cameras in the virtual production hauler, I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and I need to get myself a glass of water.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use